What's up everyone, Mike here from the BFH Garage. Today, gonna install some Metalcloak relocation shock mounts. These are the Weld-on version, not the extension. They do make an extension that comes off the existing shock mount, but the leverage on those sometimes becomes overwhelming and they can break off fairly easily. These mounts are pretty nice in the sense that they get up there and they're able to move the shock backwards from the axle. And the reason we want to do that is when you install a lift, your pinion's going to need to rotate up. And when you rotate your pinion up, this spring perch here will also rotate back. And when it rotates back, it'll make contact right here against your shock body. So the way to get around that is, like I said, with either shock relocation brackets that are bolt-on, or you can do the Weld-on shock relocation mount right here. Now, Metalcloak's instructions are a little bit vague in the sense that they say, get your Jeep at ride height, everything's set the way it is, and then you're gonna put this mount here and you're gonna line it up with the bottom of the axle tube. The problem with that is that it doesn't take into account what you want for shock travel. For me, I do a lot of rock crawl and things like that, so I'm trying to get a 50-50 shock travel, meaning that if I have a 10-inch travel shock, I'm trying to get 5 inches up and 5 inches down. Sometimes you'll get a little more down, a little less up. It depends on how everything's set up. But with these, I can measure that exact shock travel, put this on here, and attach the shock and weld it in exactly where I want it to go. So you'll see what I'm talking about once we get this new axle installed. All right, here we are at ride height. So when you look at the axle, you want to make sure that you get this thing at ride height both sides. I used to have some spacers that I would use for stuff like this. Since I built my shop, I've misplaced them. So now I just took a couple pieces of rebar, cut them down to the ride height length, put it in both spring buckets to make sure that the axle is flat to the upper spring perch and that this is at true ride height right now. So the other thing I wanted to do first is make sure that I have it centered. So I'm at ride height. I want to make sure it's centered left to right. And so that's taken care of. So now I can come back to the shock, take a look, get this thing burned in the way it needs to be. Now these shocks from the factory have this white strap on here that keep them compressed. And they're compressed at what would be considered a 50-50 travel. So when you look at these white straps, that is the halfway point of this shock's travel. I figured that out from the other side. I probably should have known better than that, but I figured it out from the other side by taking the strap off the other shock, actually it broke off, and then put some tick marks along the entire length of the shock travel to figure out where my 50-50 point was. And it ends up being what the shock is underneath the load of the strap there. So I've got the bolt through the shock mount here, and when you put that up like so, I'm gonna have to do a little bit of clearancing on that control arm bracket, but once I do that, I'm gonna get it the rest of the way. I'll be able to tack this in just like that. And according to Metalcloak's instructions, they said that this would be at the bottom of that tube, and it's about an inch or so lower. So I don't know if I'm misunderstanding their instructions or what the deal is, but this will give this Jeep here 50-50 travel the way it is. So I'm gonna burn this in just like this and do the same thing to the other side. So fairly straightforward. If you don't have the strap on your shocks and you're still trying to figure out where to burn these in, just figure out what the travel length of your shock is. You can get a jack or something under here to get it right at that halfway point. Then you can put it right up against the tube, tack it in place, and then come out, finish burning it in the rest of the way, and you'll be good to go. So let's get this thing tacked. Hey, once you get everything all burned in, put a nice coat of self-etching primer on there, get it painted in the color of your choice. Most time is black. Not a whole lot of people do anything else, but just get a good coat of paint all the way through to make sure we're not gonna have any rust issues. And that's it, man. It's pretty straightforward.